Hello again. 2 months ago, Boris Johnson seemed to be on the verge of being removed from office by his own party. Such an embarrassment had he become. Across the Atlantic, people were openly speculating about the possibility that Joe Biden was showing the early signs of Alzheimer's, and there was talk of trying to get him to take a cognitive assessment. No more, though. With one bound, both men have found a new lease of life as energetic and trustworthy leaders of the free world against the looming menace of Russia. It is a fantastic reversal of fortune for both men in a very short space of time. They can hardly have believed their luck when the Russians invaded Ukraine. Except, of course, it was not really luck at all, because NATO, the military alliance to which both Britain and the United States belong, has been trying to provoke Russia for years, ever since the fall of the Berlin Wall, in fact. The breakup of the Soviet Union and the collapse of the Warsaw Pact could have ushered in a new era of harmony for the world with the end of the Cold War. For over 30 years, NATO on the one side and the Warsaw Pact on the other acted as counterbalances, leaning against each other and providing a stability of sorts. Once one of those blocks was dismantled, when the Warsaw Pact came to an end, there was a marvellous chance to cut back NATO as well and let Europe run its own destiny. But no. What Britain and America actually did was to start intriguing and manoeuvring and trying to push their military forces further and further east. While assuring the Russians that they would not do so, NATO went about in a very underhand way signing up all the former Warsaw Pact countries as members of NATO, which meant in effect that American and British forces began to be stationed not just in the nations of Eastern Europe, but actually in areas which were once part of the Soviet Union, places like Estonia. The Russians not unnaturally became increasingly unhappy at seeing NATO troops being posted on what had recently been their own territory. Estonia was part of Russia until the early 1990s. The further east NATO crept, the more uneasy the Russians became. Then finally they'd had enough, because there was talk of Ukraine joining NATO, bringing Western troops right up to the Russian border and occupying what was seen as the Russian heartland. At this point, Russia warned that they would not tolerate this and did everything possible short of war to prevent Ukraine from taking this step. Finally, they lost patience, with the result that we can all see. If NATO had simply stayed where it was and made no attempts to keep moving ever closer towards Moscow with its acquisition of former Warsaw Pact territory, does anybody really think that Russia would have launched the invasion? They wouldn't. I don't say that Biden and Boris Johnson engineered this to save their administrations and so they wouldn't have to resign, but they've certainly taken full advantage of the war and exploited it as much as they possibly can.